Is Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League really canon? Well, I'm going to make a clear argument that it isn't. But just bear with me. The following video will contain spoilers about Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League based on rumors, so you've been warned. Also, I wanted to take the time to thank you guys and gals for watching the previous documentary video. I'm going to try to keep this one shorter because, I mean, it's kind of a shorter topic, but who knows? I never really know what's going to happen once I get started. So, anyway, is the Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League really canon? I'm going to argue no. There are several inconsistencies that I want to bring to your attention that kind of prove my point. Now, there would be no problem with this being part of the Arkham universe if it was considered an Elseworlds. We've already had an Arkham universe Elseworlds project. It was called Assault on Arkham. As well as Arkham City Lockdown is considered not canon to the Arkham games. But it also was an Arkham game set in the quote-unquote Arkham universe. It just wasn't part of Rocksteady's canonical universe. Just like the comic books from DC Comics that were Arkham-based are all non-canon, the same can be said for Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's start with Batman, for instance. Now, Batman has a very interesting role in Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. He is controlled by Brainiac, and he's basically like the Batman who laughs. He killed all his allies, allegedly. He's become his greatest fear, which is evil. And he's a puppet of Brainiac. He's also probably one of Brainiac's like right-hand guys. Which is weird because you wouldn't think Batman would be brainwashed and easily taken over, especially after the events of Arkham Knight, unless they're basically just going to sweep all that stuff under the rug and have it be like a nightmare where Batman, you know, none of that stuff happened. He was under the influence, like seeing Barbara die when it never happened. Which would be very disheartening if they did that, but I mean, how else could you have Batman be active with the Justice League if it never happened? They made mention of it in the Arkham comic books that Dini wrote, but those aren't connected to the games. In fact, there is no mention of a Justice League at all in the Arkham universe, outside of talking about individual superheroes like Superman, Wonder Woman, and The Flash. And maybe Green Lantern, but I don't remember. You'd have to correct me if I'm wrong in that regard. But Batman is a very public figure in this new Justice League, and he's been in the public eye for some time, which would completely retcon Arkham Knight because, I mean, he had a lot of criminal charges against him once his identity was revealed. There's no way even Lex Luthor would be able to bail him out after the world finds out he's Batman. So I don't think people would want to see him gallivanting around out in the open hanging out with super friends. You know what I mean? It just wouldn't happen. Now, if this is like a branched reality of an Elseworld story, then totally makes sense that Batman is still, one, not acting like a nightmarish fool using fear toxin and scaring the, you know, the crap out of would-be supervillains. Also, you know, other people would know that he was still around, and a lot of people act surprised to see him. So there's a lot of inconsistencies in the Suicide Squad. But the biggest one is the Justice League never existed. Ever. None of the Bat family make mention of it. Batman never makes mention of it. Alfred never makes mention of it. And you know, the Rocksteady crew, the original ones, they could have easily orchestrated that, and so could Paul Dini, but they were doing a separate continuity just like they did with Batman the Animated Series that Dini was a part of. That was the plan. This was a Batman story. There was no time for the Justice League. So that is point number one. Batman would not be with the Justice League if this was connected to the Arkham games. It can't happen. Number two, Deadshot. So Deadshot is a very unique character, and I'm just gonna, you know, pull the trigger and tell you the real story behind it. So a gentleman who is no longer a part of Rocksteady and hasn't been, disclosed to me in private years ago when they decided on changing the race of Deadshot, that the reason why is it was a corporate decision because Will Smith was playing Deadshot. They were essentially pulling a Samuel L. Jackson thing with Nick Fury. You know, they were changing the character because the actor happened to be a different race. That was it. Now, they went through and they dodged as many questions as possible once they did that because they were afraid of being canceled, which, I mean, I don't blame them. So they're going to skirt around the truth forever about this. Then they had to come up with this whole nonsense that the Deadshot that we met in Arkham Origins and Arkham City and Arkham City Lockdown wasn't the real Deadshot, even though Batman wouldn't be fooled by a pretender because he met the original. So, I mean, when they did that kind of stuff, they made everything fall apart. Also, the two Deadshots have completely different characters. The Deadshot that we see in Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League is actually pretty cool. He's a very charismatic, fun, witty guy who's, you know, very serious when he gets down to business. He's very much like Will Smith. The reason for the change about Will is Will planned on being Deadshot for a very long time. He was even going to reprise his role in the Suicide Squad 2 movie, but they gave it to the other actor, where they brought in Bloodsport, I believe was his name. So, I mean, Will Smith's, you know, probably DCU career is over, but the change had already been done by corporate, so there's no really going back once they do that, because you'll get crucified online. So that's why they did it. Then, again, they had to orchestrate a whole story about why this happened, and it really doesn't make any sense. But like I said, his character is much cooler than the original Deadshot because that guy was pretentious, he was cocky, you know, the ego on that guy was insane. So it feels like this version of Deadshot is a guy that is more cool of character and gets down to business, you know. Next up, we have Harley Quinn and the Penguin. So this one was weird to me, and we're going to have to talk about the Arkham Knight DLC for reference. So in the Arkham Knight DLC, Penguin is constantly trying to get Harley Quinn to go out with him, and, you know, brings up that the Joker's gone and all this other stuff, and Harley is very flattered, but there's no way in heck that's ever going to happen. And Penguin is basically simping for her so hard, and Harley is just not interested. Now, this is before Harley finds out that Henry Adams, who is Jokerized, has a whole group of Jokers that are in the movie studios. So this takes place in Bloodhaven beforehand, and Harley has really no idea what's going on. Harley Quinn's inner thoughts, too, are still discussing her unhealthy infatuation with the dead Joker. In fact, Harleen Quinzel, which is Harley's real personality, Dr. Quinzel, is trying to convince her other self to give up not only her life of crime, but move on past the toxicity of the Joker. And Harley Quinn, you know, the harmed persona that is, you know, currently out and about, like beating up officers in Bloodhaven, can't get over Joker. Like, she just can't. Just like in the Arkham City DLC, Harley Quinn's Revenge, she can't move on. She was also going through a miscarriage from the Joker, and her whole life was over to the point where she literally snaps, and instead of being that, you know, side character that doesn't really amount to anything in the Arkham games, just being a henchwoman, she actually tries to be a real threat to Gotham by killing Batman, and she almost succeeded, just like the Mad Love episode. So that was actually kind of cool, but then we don't really get to see that Harley Quinn anymore, that confident and, you know, potential supervillain, because she just goes back to being this girl that has this unhealthy love for a dead guy and basically plans her entire life around it. And even the Penguin sees that that's kind of a problem and is trying to offer, you know, a change of pace for her. And, you know, he likes her, I guess, but Harley was like, yeah, never gonna happen. So, according to rumors, the Penguin and her used to be a thing, which would also discredit that this game is connected to the Arkham games. Now let's discuss the Ivy thing. We have two parts to this. We're going to talk about Ivy coming back, basically like Groot, which isn't a problem, and then the relationship that never happened in the Arkham games. So those will be our final points. Let's start with Pamela Isley first. Now, Pamela Isley coming back like Groot is not a problem for me. In fact, that does not actually change the canon of the Arkham games. It is in line with Ivy's powers, if you didn't know. So a little background on Ivy. When the character was first created, she was this typical lady that was going to flaunt her charms and get Batman to fall for her pheromones. And then as time went on, the character had a metamorphosis, and her kiss ability could not only kill men like Sonya Blade in Mortal Kombat, but also it could mind control them to some regard. Then in the late 80s and early 90s, her skin changed colors and she became more of a metahuman. She could control plants, she had telekinesis, she could make things grow. She was a very unique character. She essentially became a metahuman because of that. Then later on, they tied her to the green, which was Swamp Thing's power and kind of this mystic element of the DC universe that made her even more powerful. Gave her the abilities to regenerate, come back from death, heal, duplicate herself, you name it. Whatever comic book people decided to write for Ivy, that's what she could do. In fact, you saw this change in the animated series as well. So, yeah, Ivy coming back as Groot, that's not a problem. In fact, I think you could even argue that they kind of show it happening. When she dies, her petals are scattered everywhere, and right before she dies, she fixes the tree that she was inside and makes it come to life. Now, it's possible she could have left a little of her DNA behind to sprout a new Ivy, but, I mean, there's no proof of it, but there's no proof against it either. Now, the elephant in the room. Harley and Ivy was never canon in the Arkham games. Now, Harley and Ivy first became kind of canonized in DC Comics in 2015. The Arkham games started in 2009 with development starting as early as 2008, where Harley was a straight character. Harley was created by Paul Dini for Batman the Animated Series as a one-off character that was a spoof of 1960s female fatale Batman Adam West sidekicks, where, you know, they were led astray by bad companionship, and Batman would do this whole, like, well, you know, we'll get you the proper help, and it's not your fault that you're evil. In fact, Paul Dini actually referenced the 60s Batman show when he had Harley Quinn use that same line against animated series Batman, who wasn't having it. So, you know, it was a nice throwback, but Harley was a character that was inspired by Arlene Sorkin's performance in a soap opera in the 80s where she played a Harlequin. And then that's how Harley Quinn was created. Paul Dini especially wanted Arlene Sorkin to come in and do the voice, and that's how Harley was born. It was this obnoxious, ditzy, blonde Jersey accent that was just supposed to be a henchwench. As time went on, Paul Dini changed her to be like an independent, strong woman, and then DC Comics ran with the character even more and made numerous changes to her personality, as well as her dating preferences. But when the Arkham games were in development, especially Arkham Asylum, Arkham City, and Arkham Knight, none of these changes were happening for the writers to take inspiration from for that romantic relationship in even Arkham Knight. See, in Arkham Asylum, Harley and Ivy were best friends just like the BTS. That was a reference to that. When we next see Ivy and Harley together, it's in Arkham Knight, and she's there to bust out Ivy based on, you know, what Scarecrow wants, which is all the villains getting together to kind of like plot Batman's demise. And while they're there, they don't really have any time to have that type of relationship, and they seem to be platonic friends in that regard. The comic books are not canon. The Arkham Knight comics are not canon to the game itself. That was strictly for that comic universe, because that comic universe does not, you know, merge into the Arkham Knight game. For one, here's a clear indication. Bane is killed, and it's a murder mystery prior to the events of Arkham Knight. It literally happens a day or two before Arkham Knight happens, where Batman is trying to track down the murderer Bane. In the Arkham Knight video game, literally, which takes place supposedly 24 hours after those events, Batman mentions no murder mystery whatsoever. No character does. Gordon, nothing. This is the first time they're hearing about the Arkham Knight, ever, is their introduction to him, whereas in the comic books, they kind of spill the beans, and they're trying to find this guy who's going around killing Batman villains. Never happened. Same thing if Ivy and Harley was a thing in those comic books, didn't happen in the game, because the Arkham Knight game was written between 2014. It just wasn't in that people's mindset. So that's another strike against this game, that it can't be considered canon, because that relationship never happened. Also, can we just bring attention to the fact that Harley looking at Ivy as a 9-year-old being reborn is kind of creepy, alluding to a relationship they had when the kid is 9 that's gross. I don't know what Rocksteady is doing with that. That needs a good public shaming, if that's what they're alluding to. But anyway, those are my clear points how this game universe cannot be connected to the Arkham games that we know and love. There's too many inconsistencies. Had this game been announced like it's basically Arkham Assault, then that's no problem, because you can change Deadshot, you can change Ivy and Harley's thing, you can change Harley and Penguin, ew. You can change how Batman's running around with the Justice League for years out in the open. You can do all those things, but you cannot combine them with things that already happened and things that never happened in those games prior. There was no Justice League, there was no Penguin and Harley, there was no Black Deadshot. None of these things happened, you know? So, I mean, maybe next time, Rocksteady, practice your continuity a little bit better, because this is really amateurish. Anyway, now I want to hear from all of you guys and gals. Do you agree with me that this game just has too many fallacies to be connected to the Arkham games? Or do you somehow magically believe that this game is somehow still connected to the games that you've already played and met these characters? Let me know in the comment section below. So anyway, people, thanks so much for watching. Have a great rest of your day. I'll be back probably at New Year's with another video. We'll see how this does. There'll probably be more Suicide Squad stuff happening, but yeah. Thanks for listening, and I will catch you guys next time.